Doc on the Run. We help injured runners run.
One common recommendations doctors will give you after you've been in a fracture walking boot or crutches for 6 weeks is they'll tell you that you can start activity, but they typically write down on the instruction sheet they give you something like this. It'll say maybe, okay to walk 5 to 10 minutes. But if you really think about that advice, it's a terrible plan. If you just start walking, you have a whole lot of force applied to your injured foot in a very short period of time. To me, this seems like maximum risk with minimum reward. Here's the way you should think about recommended return to activity. You are a runner. Your goal isn't to walk. Your goal certainly isn't to walk 5 minutes in your living room or your kitchen. Your goal is to get back to activity, and chances are good that real return to activity for you looks more like running 10 miles on a trail. Real activity is not walking 5 minutes in your living room. So first of all, walking 5 or 10 minutes in your house is not going to feel like real activity to you. I think it's more likely to actually just remind you that you're temporarily crippled. The flip side of this, of course, is that the amount of stress you apply to your foot when you walk around in this state of profound weakness, complete discoordination, and crutch-induced or fracture walking boot-induced state of clumsiness is very, very risky. Walking around for a few minutes with unpredictable forces getting loaded through your foot is actually relatively stressful. Everything is weakest right at the end of your period of immobilization. As soon as your doctor takes off that cast, as soon as you stop using crutches, that is the weakest and riskiest time to start full weight bearing in the form of uncoordinated hobbling. Even 5 minutes of walking in this state is risky. I think it's much better to try to apply stress in ways that are less risky and more productive. I think it's better for athletes to do a longer period of exercise, particularly if it involves some sort of aerobic exercise that will make them actually feel like they're exercising instead of highlighting the fact that they're injured. As an aside, we know that if your bones are weaker, you can actually strengthen them just by moving the limb, firing the muscles, even without applying weight. Even if you're on crutches, you can fight the bone loss known to plague athletes who are told they can't walk while healing. Now, if you take the right approach, you can probably apply an equivalent amount of force with a much better form of exercise. The goal of the exercise should be to restore some range of motion, start building or rebuilding your muscle strength, and decrease your stress levels. The point, of course, is that you can choose an activity that applies a limited amount of stress, roughly the equivalent of hobbling around the house for 5 or 10 minutes. If the stress is incorporated into an exercise lasting for 30 to 60 minutes, doesn't it just stand to reason that it's going to help you get on the fast track to healing? You have to keep in mind the postoperative instruction sheets. In general, any pre-written instructions that are handed to you in a doctor's office are not usually written for athletes. Trust me, when I had a standard practice, I did the same thing. I had the standard instructions written out for every standard patient with every standard condition, and rather than explain it all to them, I would just hand them an instruction sheet. Most of the people who get the standard instruction sheet never intend to run anyway, and they don't need a recovery plan which will facilitate them getting to the place where they could ride 100 miles or go run on a trail. Make sure you ask for special instructions that will get you back to running faster.
Doc on the Run. We help injured runners run.